ability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. Mostly cloudy, cooler and less humid today, a high of 62. Partly cloudy and cooler tonight, low of 42. Partly sunny and cool tomorrow, a high of 58 and a low of 42. For Friday, times of clouds and sun, a high of 65, low of 52. Saturday, cooler with rain, a high of 58, low of 51. Sunday, cloudy with rain possible, a high of 64, low of 55. For Monday, cloudy, high of 67, low of 54. And for Tuesday, some brightening, high of 72 and a low of 58. The pollen count today is high. Sunrise was at 5:58 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:37 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. A heartbreaking loss, but a thrilling season. Loyal fans salute team following remarkable ride. The despair didn't dissipate Tuesday around KeyBank Center. It hung over all the proceedings inside and outside the arena as we returned less than 15 hours after the Buffalo season suddenly turned into ashes. The adornments on Alumni Plaza were coming down and starting to get trucked away. Inside, players had their equipment packed and had tables full of memorabilia to sign. The ice sat quiet, and it will stay that way until September, when training camp opens and the long grind of the NHL schedule starts up again. Oh, how fine it would have been to be in Carolina this week. The Sabres were one goal away, one goal from a trip to the NHL's Eastern Conference Final and a matchup with the Carolina Hurricanes. A chance for Lindy Ruff to avenge one of the most bitter defeats of his career, Game 7 of the 2006 East Final, when the Sabres couldn't hold a 2-1 third-period lead and lost to Carolina 4-2. Instead, it's the Montreal Canadiens who are heading south. It's one of those how did that happen games that have happened far too often in Sabres history. The Habs got an overtime goal from Alex Newhook to beat Buffalo 3-2 Monday night in Game 7 of their Stanley Cup second-round series. It was a little freaky to ponder how Newhook beat Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen at the same end of the ice, not far from the spot where Pittsburgh Darius Kasparaitis burned Dominik Hasek in overtime of Game 7 in Round 2 in 2001. We saw yet another wild game on Monday as the Sabres battled back from a 2-0 deficit after the first period and played better over the final 50 minutes. But all it takes is one shot, and Newhook's knuckle pucks from the left circle eluded Luukkonen. It still hurts, and I think it's going to hurt for a while. Forward Zach Benson, whose national profile made a huge jump during these playoffs, and said as the team opened its end-of-season meetings with reporters Tuesday. It's a strange feeling today, added Yale-educated goalie Alex Lyon, erudite as always with his thoughts. Everybody thought that we had the capacity to move forward and had a lot of belief that we were able to move forward, and it ended really abruptly, as it always does. I've never experienced Game 7 overtime, and it wasn't even playing the game last night, so I'm sure however emotional it was for me, it was 10 times more emotional for the guys that were playing. Part of the reason this loss was so emotional was because of the missed opportunities. On the overtime winner, Rasmus Dahlin and Tage Thompson were pickpocketed on the blue line, and just moments earlier, Thompson didn't get much out of a 2-on-1 break with Benson, when he probably should have passed to an open Benson or taken the shot. Instead, he went for a toe drag, which played into the hands of Montreal goalie Jacob Dobish, and the Habs' defense killed the chance. Obviously, it's a world-class player making a world-class play, Benson said of Thompson, who scored the golden goal in overtime of Team USA in last year's World Championships in Sweden on a similar move. He toe drags the D-man, gets around the goalie, and the goalie makes a hell of a save. As a super opportunity, I like the odds of having Tomer and having the puck on Tomer's stick in that situation. Then there was another elephant in the room. Beck Melenstein's apparent goal with about 10 minutes left, which was wiped out by a quick whistle from referee Wes McCauley as the puck leaked through Dobis's pads. But over the past 48 hours, emotions across Western New York were across the spectrum. The heartbreak that came with a Game 7 overtime loss was also met with the warm feeling that came with a remarkable season. After 14 seasons of futility, the Sabres didn't just make a breakthrough and end the longest playoff drought in NHL history. They took their loyal, long-suffering fans on one of the greatest thrill rides in recent hockey history, going from last in the Eastern Conference in December to one goal from the conference final in May. In quick succession, everything started to click. Younger players started to blossom. Owner Terry Pegula finally showed general manager Kevin Adams the door. The Sabres turned into the hottest team in the NHL, winning 10 straight games and zooming onto the Olympic break. And when play resumed, they stayed hot, finishing with 109 points to win an ultra-competitive Atlantic Division. By Monday night, after Newhook's shocking game winner and the traditional handshake line, the Buffalo fans, who had spent the better part of 4 months screaming their lungs out, stuck around for some last ovation, showing gratitude towards a Sabres team that made them feel good about their team and its future. Coming up on Wednesday will be more emotion at the interview dais. Darlene is slated to start off the morning. We should hear from the likes of Thompson, Matthias Samuelsson, Jason Zucker, Bowen Byram, Luukkonen, and others. The biggest name, of course, will be Alex Tuch, and that conversation figures to be very interesting. For one thing, we need to know what injury he was dealing with. He could possibly have been healthy against the Habs, given the way he played against Boston. No point in a -10 in a 7-game series from a top-line guy. Tuch could be heading into free agency, but this kind of finish may not help his cause. He's invested so much time and energy here, it seems crazy that he would leave now just to chase an extra couple $1 million. We're also scheduled to hear from Ruff and general manager Jarmo Kekalainen. Ruff is the only sitting head coach in the NHL without a contract for next season. But as he told me last month in Washington, it's not something fans should worry about. Aside from whatever is going on with Tuch, I'm curious to know what Kekalainen thinks happened at home in the playoffs. With incredible fan support, the Sabres were just 2-5, dropping 3 straight to the Habs that included defeats in Game 5 and 7. It sucks to lose Game 7 like that, said winger Josh Stone, and a lot of that's on us for not being better earlier in the series. It's something you do have to learn how to handle your emotions as a young team at home. It's all stepping stones for our group in the right direction, but yeah, you can't lose 3 games at home in a best of 7. A stark reality for a season suddenly lost.
Thank you, Larry. Seneca leader says Hochul is dodging requests to meet. A year ago, Governor Kathy Hochul stood beside Seneca Nation of Indians President J. Conrad Seneca to apologize for the state's role in the atrocities inflicted on indigenous children at the former Thomas Indian School in Irving. On Tuesday, Seneca called on Hochul to put money behind those words and to stop dodging his request to meet. In a lobbying trip to Albany, Seneca revealed he sent repeated letters to Hochul asking for them to meet to discuss the future of the still unresolved gaming compact that dates to 2002. It allows the Seneca Nation to exclusively operate casinos in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and Salamanca. In return, the state takes 25% of the gaming profits. That agreement expired in December 2023. Seneca said he made it clear to Hochul he is willing to discuss the compact anywhere in the state and said he would meet practically any time with no response from the governor. It's frustrating, Seneca told reporters. We don't get a response back, and unwillingness of the leader of this state refusing to sit down with the leadership of a native nation. I would almost call it disrespectful in regard to that type of conduct in regards to nation-to-nation relationship and working on the same level as sovereigns. She's in and out of Western New York. She goes and she meets and she sees everybody else. But the Seneca Nation is not on her radar. I don't know why. Only she can answer that. Her staff tries to answer for that, but again, it's a lot of excuses on a lot of different things. It's getting hard for me to accept. Asked when the last time he personally spoke with the governor about the gaming compact, the president said it was last July. Asked what that says to him, he said, "It's not good." Former Seneca Nation President Todd Gates, now a Cattaraugus councilor, echoed Seneca's frustration with the governor. "We've waited too long for some of the things that she's promised," he said. "We just want a fair deal." Assemblymember Joseph Sempolinsky, a Republican of Canastillo, who represents Allegheny and Cattaraugus counties, said he's extraordinarily frustrated with how long the gaming compact has dragged out. A spokesperson for Hochul said Governor Hochul is committed to strengthening the government-to-government relationship between the Seneca Nation and the state of New York. Our administration continues to meet with Seneca officials to find ways for additional collaboration and discuss the unique challenges facing the nation. Seneca, elected in November 2024, has said he wanted the Seneca Nation to be known for more than just the gambling compact. Last year, his top priority was for Hochul to apologize for the state's involvement running the Thomas Indian School on the Seneca Nation Cattaraugus territory. In 1875, the state took over the institution, which had opened in 1855 as the Thomas Asylum for Orphan and Destitute Indian Children, and kept it until its closure in 1957. It had been one of many such schools in the United States and Canada where American Indian, Alaskan Native, and Native Hawaiian children were forcibly taken from their families in the name of cultural assimilation. In 2021, In 2021, the U.S. Department of the Interior started to investigate the history of the schools. Former President Joe Biden later apologized on behalf of the U.S. for the horrors that took place. On May 20th, 2025, Hochul apologized for the state's role at the Thomas Indian School. She said she wanted to create new education materials about indigenous nations, histories, cultures, and contributions, adding, "I want that in our New York K through 12 schools, so there's a deeper understanding of the people whose land we are on and what they have gone through." On Tuesday, Seneca said he wants the state to invest $1 million in a still unfinalized state budget to start the process of building two schools, one on the Seneca Nation's Allegheny territory, the other on the Cattaraugus territory, to help the Seneca Nation immerse its students in Seneca language and culture. Overall, the price tag would exceed $14 million, he said. A representative of the Hochul administration said officials from her office met Monday with the Seneca Nation to discuss their request to fund the language schools. Seneca also asked Hochul to back the $150,000 study of ground-penetrating radar at the campus of the Thomas Indian School to search for the remains of children who went missing or were killed. Their final resting place is unknown. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. States sue over student loan restrictions. Washington. A group of Democratic-led states filed a lawsuit on Tuesday challenging a new rule the Trump administration issued that could limit access to federal student loans for people pursuing advanced professional degrees in healthcare-related fields. Democratic attorneys general from 23 states and the District of Columbia joined with the governors of Kentucky and Pennsylvania to file a lawsuit in federal court in Maryland, arguing that the U.S. Department of Education's new rule is unlawful. The department announced the rule on April 30th in order to implement new federal student loan caps the Republican-led Congress adopted in July when it had passed President Trump's tax and spending bill known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Under that law, borrowing for students enrolled in professional degree programs such as law schools and medical schools was capped at $50,000 a year and $200,000 total, while students pursuing other graduate degrees would be limited to $20,500 per year and up to $100,000 overall. The states say that Congress, in enacting the caps, defined professional degree programs subject to the higher cap using an existing federal definition of a professional degree that captured degrees that ready students for careers that generally require professional licensure. But the states contend that the Education Department's new rule unlawfully narrowed who counted as professional students to exclude those working to become nurses, physician assistants, and physical therapists, among other health-related career tracks. This rule will shut talented people out of critical professions and leave communities with fewer health care providers they desperately need, New York Attorney General Letitia James said in a statement. Undersecretary of Education Nicholas Kent, in a statement, called the loan caps a common-sense step to address the decades of unchecked student loan borrowing that gave schools no reason to control costs. Clearly, these Democratic governors and attorneys general are more concerned about institutions' bottom line rather than American students and families' ability to access affordable post-secondary education. The lawsuit contends that the department's rule violates the Administrative Procedure Act because it contradicts federal law and is arbitrary and capricious. The states are also challenging another part of the Education Department's rule relating to a provision of the law that grandfathered in current students who had borrowed federal student loans before the caps take effect on July. The states say that the rule would unlawfully strip those students of those protections if they transfer schools or temporarily withdraw and later re-enroll. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:16. Today in history, Wednesday, May 20th. 1498, explorer Vasco da Gama reached Calicut, India, becoming the first European to sail to India by a route around Africa. 1609, William Shakespeare's sonnets were first published in London. 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Homestead Act, which granted 160 acres of federal land to some U.S. citizens after they had worked that land for 5 years and paid a filing fee. 1873, Levi Strauss and Jacob Davis received a patent for using metal rivets at strategic points to strengthen work pants. 1902, the Republic of Cuba declared its independence from the United States. The island had been a protectorate of the United States since the end of the Spanish-American War in 1898. 1916, the Saturday Evening Post published its first Norman Rockwell cover illustration. In 1932, Amelia Earhart took off from Newfoundland, Canada, to begin her flight to Northern Ireland, becoming the first female pilot to make a solo, non-stop transatlantic flight. In 1956, the United States tested its first hydrogen bomb dropped from an aircraft over Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. And in 1990, the Hubble Space Telescope took its first photo from space, meant to help focus the device. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial, Unwilling to Serve. Lack of school board candidates vacates an essential civic responsibility. Western New York's lack of school board candidates is not just disheartening, it's unsustainable. When too few people choose to serve on volunteer school boards throughout Erie and Niagara counties, voters are left filling in the blanks with write-in names. This is not democracy, it's a popularity contest by default. But there are no real winners, especially not an unprepared resident suddenly faced with decisions about budgets, staffing, and school buildings. Of course, there is no obligation to serve, but what is the alternative? A lack of suburban school board candidates is not new. In 2021, when Cheektowaga voters went to choose members of their school boards, there weren't enough candidates to fill the slots. Today, the problem remains. As reported by the News' Stephen T. Watson, the same candidate is on the ballot in a half-dozen area school districts in Tuesday's elections. Blank. An astonishing 6 of the 38 districts in Erie and Niagara counties did not have enough candidates returning to fill the available school board seats. That means write-in votes. 2, Cheektowaga Central and Lewiston Porter, did not have anyone on their ballots. Adding in the 21 districts where there were the same number of candidates as board seats, about 70% of school board elections in the region are non-competitive this year. And only 11 school districts in the 2 counties had contested board races. It's a dire situation reflected throughout the nation. The Center for American Progress in September 17, 2024 article cited low voter turnout, sometimes as low as 5 to 10%, in uncontested seats and vacancies. The stakes are high. School board members make important decisions about school districts' budgets, curriculum, and leadership. Deciding who makes those decisions should not be left to chance, and yet it is happening. Locally, in 27 of 38 school board elections in Erie and Niagara counties on Tuesday were not contested. The 6 districts that didn't have enough interest to fill the seats on the ballot include Cheektowaga Central, with no candidate for 1 seat. Newport, no candidates for 2 seats. Holland, 1 for 2 seats. Springville Griffith, 1 for 3 seats. Royalton Heartland, 2 for 4 seats. And Stir Point, 2 for 3 seats. Whoever receives the most write-in votes will have the chance to serve on the school board. Again, the write-in winners are not obligated to accept their victories, though there are certainly would be pressure to accept. How do communities make school board service appealing again? Some proposed solutions involve reconfiguring school districts or compensating school board members for their time. Only New York's Big 5 school districts, which include Buffalo's, pay school board members. Williamsville last year began studying its possibility. However, such a move would require permission from the state legislature. If school boards are becoming more difficult to staff, then policymakers and voters must consider structural changes. Serving on the school board is, as some indicated, a thankless task. It involves countless hours of work reviewing data and sitting in meetings, as well as the probability of facing public criticism, both in person and on social media. Board members must vote on decisions to cut budgets, lay off valued staff, even close school buildings. It isn't a cakewalk, but it remains an essential and underappreciated form of civic service, one worthy of people willing to serve for the right reasons. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons. The first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News, and it shows a saber, such as what the Buffalo Sabres have, and it's titled A Double-Edged Sword. That's because on one edge of the saber, it says, "Season ends in heartbreaks." And in the bottom, on the other side of the saber, the other sharp edge, it says, "Hockey is fun and full of heart again." And the second cartoon is by Gary Varvel of Creator Syndicate, and it shows a high school graduation. And I think this might be the valedictorian, I'm not sure, giving a speech, but as she is at the podium, there's the principal and the teacher behind her, and the principal is just putting his hand over his eyes. But anyhow, she is at the podium, and the podium is listed as class of 2026, and she is holding a selfie stick with her cell phone attached to the end, so she is waving to it and all that. And there are 2 students in the front row. One he's looking at his messages on a cell phone, and the other one is taking a picture of himself on a cell phone. But anyhow, the woman at the podium with the selfie, she says, "A shout out to AI for carrying my GPA while I grew my following." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. America the Beautiful is a better anthem. It was hard not to be moved by the Sabres fans who sang "O Canada" due to the technical glitch at Game 5 against the Bruins. As Buffalonians, we know how the closeness with our northern neighbors is not just based on proximity, but also sensibility. Not to mention, the Canadian anthem is much more lovely, singable, and accessible than the war-soaked and pyrotechnic-laden anthem we have adopted in the U.S., which was based on an old British tavern tune. As we search our American soul after 250 years as a nation, it would behoove us to adapt something more peaceful and sustainable as our anthem. I would hope this symbolic move would correlate with a benevolent shift in how this country treats its citizens and all fellow humans, as well as the land, waters, and air we need for life. It is time to make America the Beautiful the new national anthem of the United States. This from Richard Peters of Buffalo. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Americans are better than this. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, to borrow from Charles Dickens. Light is most valuable when it's darkest. We may not agree on America's level of darkness, but few can deny we haven't lived in quite this level of chaos. No honest red-blooded American can accept the level of skullduggeries currently going on in the country. What would Patrick Henry do? Or Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, James Madison? I'd like to offer something from Prophet Muhammad to be accepted for any value it can provide. He said, "If you see the day of judgment coming and a flower needs planting, plant the flower." Translation: always err on the side of productivity, optimism, and positivity. This is truth, liberty, and the American way. We must activate great moral courage to do what is universally right without regard to party, race, religion, or class. Yes, we need morality in government. Lose it, and we're finished as a society. Without the protecting force of morality, extremism, authoritarianism, fascism, communism, and materialism will spread their destructive poisons. Will the American spirit of fair play win in these times? Yes, we can. And this is from Hamim Habab of Buffalo. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Diplomacy is the best way to deal with Iran. Today, there are 9 countries that have nuclear weapons, including Israel. There is no way we'd want Iran to possess a nuclear weapon, and we should try every way diplomatically to stop them from developing one. Iran is a dangerous nation. But are they more dangerous than North Korea, Russia, China, or the constantly feuding countries of India and Pakistan? Would they have the ability to match what the U.S. has in its nuclear arsenal? Russia is at war with Ukraine. Have they used a nuclear weapon? Israel is at war with Iran. Have they used a nuclear weapon? Has either India or Pakistan used a nuclear weapon? The only country to ever have used a nuclear weapon is the United States in 1945. And since the nuclear powers have followed the long-established principle of mutual assured destruction, each nuclear power realizes that if they launch a nuclear weapon, it could escalate into the destruction of the human race. And who among the 9 nuclear powers would threaten the United States with nuclear war when the U.S. probably has the ability to totally annihilate all of the other nuclear adversaries? It's a dangerous world that we live in, where probably the greatest danger is getting into a nuclear war is by accident or by succumbing to the whims of a futuristic artificial intelligence. We should try every way diplomatically possible to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but we can't go to war with every country that tries to develop one. This from John Kowalski of Lockport. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:28. This is an article of My View, which is written by Donald Frederick, who is happy to get by with less. Losing the excess stuff can be a joy. If you are a parent and have taken a child to a grocery store, then I'm sure you are familiar with the reality that kids want almost everything. If they're young enough, there are times when you give them an item just to pacify them until it's checkout time. At the very last minute, just before checking out, you have to separate them from that item because you don't want another toy or unwanted item in your house. There is something within us causing us to always be craving or wanting more. It's very hard to be content with what we have or own. Businesses and advertisers have known this intrinsic weakness of ours for a long time. Many of the classic ads and commercials of the past were brilliantly designed to make you want things you don't need. If you do any scrolling on the internet, there are pop-up ads constantly, and don't dare click on something because you will receive reminders of the click for days or years to come. It is the same concept of the past, but in a new format. Being closer to 70 than 60, I've come up with a list of things I no longer want or desire in my life or home. Just to be clear, not all the things I do not want are material. In fact, some are as simple as eliminating drama or negative people in my life. There seems to be people who look for or thrive on drama, but not this guy. Who wants to hear someone complaining about the price of this or that the retail worker didn't jump at their every command? Again, not this guy. The more I separate myself from those kinds of people, the happier I am. My wife Doreen and I don't always see eye to eye on my list of things I no longer want. Take plants, for example. I'm not a big fan, but she is. So we have 4 or 5 around the house. Enough said, right? But there are many items or things we do agree on. As much as pets can bring love and companionship, many of our friends and family have pets. We say no thanks. We've been there and done that. No more cold winter dog walks or cleaning the backyard when the snow melts for us. At one point we had cats, including the litter box, scratched furniture, and all. Again, we say now, no thanks. We like to come and go as we please without the worry of taking care of pets. We have found that it takes a long time to get your home just the way you like it. Doreen and I have determined to eliminate clutter as much as possible. When it comes to knickknacks or collectibles, our philosophy is that less is best. We have condensed our Christmas decorations to a few bins after years of 8 or 9 bins or more, and we have somehow reduced the remaining holiday decorations to 1 bin. That was an accomplishment. My one exception is my antique radio collection, which I started years ago. We tried our best to be frugal all our marriage because we knew there would be things we no longer wanted. Loans, a mortgage, and credit card bills, just to name a few. This has eliminated a lot of stress from our lives. I hope you too can make a list of things you no longer want in your life. Although we can't control everything, being content with less is its own reward. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The following is from Clarence Page. Feeling underbabied? More like underpaid and overburdened. It was just my luck last week as my column on the fertility crisis was being laid out in newspaper pages and posted to websites. The sharpest minds of the Trump administration were gathered in the Oval Office to hold forth on the fertility crisis. As President Trump struggled to keep his eyelids open nearby, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who heads the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, stated the gravity of the crisis in terms our nation will not soon forget. 1 in 3 Americans, the former TV personality and cardiothoracic surgeon intoned, are underbabied. Eh? That means that you either don't have any children or you have less children than you would normally want to have, he said. We have a crisis that's causing our fertility rate to drop below 1.5 per woman. Replacement rate is 2.1. So we're way below what we need just to even replace the people that we have in America, he added. Flanked by Oz and other top public health officials, the president signed an executive order to establish moms.gov, a site offering helpful information to expectant mothers. Yet as Oz praised Trump for having saved Medicaid, he signed cuts into the health program into law last year, which led to drop coverage and clinic closings in the same rural America that Oz praised the president for saving. If we all assume that population growth is necessary for America's continued economic welfare, the problem is different for the left and the right center in American politics. Let's revisit Oz's concern that we replace the people that we have in America. There are only 2 ways to do this: raise the birth rate or increase immigration. America is a diverse sphere of opinion, but with rare exceptions such as the libertarian Cato Institute, the American right assiduously rejects increasing immigration to the U.S. Aside from arguments about supposedly elevated crime rates and costs to the public public purse that immigrants present, what is the right and what are the left arguments about identity? Many in the center and on the left worry about raising the immigration rate as well, but their concerns tend more to focus on standards of living, who wins or loses in the labor market, and other fiscal and economic concerns, although some are also swayed by identity. I think the public debate on fertility would be a lot more fruitful if we grounded it as a facet of the problem of maintaining steady economic growth and living standards, or affordability. When our income grows faster than our expenses for the necessities in life, that's called affordability. And when affordability reigns, we act differently from when the opposite condition obtains. It's not just personal responsibility that directs our actions, but also public policies on taxation, healthcare, funding, education, and housing, which all affect affordability. As I recall the late conservative icon Jack Kemp, advising, if you want less of something, tax it. If you want more, subsidize it. That's how I look at programs like family leave, daycare, preschool, and other nice projects for family support. Yet conservatives are the least likely to support government help, even when it produces social behaviors and goods they all agree on. Democrats are widely perceived to support such programs, but they have done a poor job, especially recently, of selling and defending them. In our polarized and dysfunctional political era, it's getting hard to remember a time when the parties could come together to improve the lives of ordinary people. And that, in itself, is a reason why many young Americans fear bringing kids into the world.
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Retailers are cashing in on America 250 merchandise. T-shirts, baseball caps, cutting boards, and more. Companies leaning into the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States with a variety of merchandise. The array of 250 branded products cropping up in stores around the country is defined by the intertwining of two themes, American nostalgia and quintessential style. That's according to Lauren Downing Peters, Associate Professor of Fashion Studies at Columbia College, Chicago, who said these products hearken to the past rather than look forward, and shows how America's birthday can be a unifying force in divided moments. Fashion, and by extension, merch, is a common ground where we can all celebrate this one shared aspect of our identity and experience as Americans, Peters said. This isn't the first time America's milestones produce merchandise, said Peters, author of Redressing American Fashion, a book about the clothes that define American history. A popular logo marking America's 1976 bicentennial is now considered an icon of retro U.S. aesthetics, she said. There's a political parallel between 1976 and 2026 in terms of American interests abroad, polarizing politics, and amidst all that, in both years, the birthday of America is a common ground, Peters said. This year, memorabilia showcases a logo of red, white, and blue lines intersecting to form the number 250. Patriotic logos and colors on T-shirts and baseball hats are quintessentially American, Peters said. It's not coincidental that the types of objects these logos are on are T-shirts and baseball caps, two elements of the American uniform, she said. The broader symbolism is aligned with how we dress as Americans. T-shirts and baseball caps are tried and true symbols of America's independent and individualistic nature, said Doran DeVita, Associate Professor of Apparel Design and Merchandising at Baylor University. A big motivation for buying America 250 merchandise is to make a statement about our support for the country and to show others we were there when a historic moment happened, DeVita said. Like any kind of fandom, America's enthusiasm for our 250th anniversary can be expressed on a continuum, she said. Many may don only a hat, while others may invest in commemorative jewelry, home goods, or other products. Others won't buy anything at all. For people who want to go all out, there'll be plenty of items they can buy, she said. Official merchandise can be found at the America 250 shop. Other retailers jumped on the trend too, from brands like Life is Good and Old Navy to a range of Etsy creators who crafted unique styles and price points to meet the moment. The celebration comes as many Americans may feel torn over enthusiasm for the nation. President Trump's approval is slipping as political divisions feel steeper than ever. Gas prices have soared, while a war in Iran is unpopular and confusing for many, polling showed. Time will tell how much consumers lean into displays of national pride this year, Peters said, as there's a confluence of events that may make some Americans wary of investing in America 250 products. Even so, many Americans still appreciate the opportunity to wear their country's colors, she said. It's important to remember that even in a moment of intense political difference, American fashion has told the nation's stories for decades, Peters said. Now as ever, what we wear gives insight into who we are and what we value. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Spike in bond yields will hurt some corners of stock market. As the spike in bond yields reemerges as a risk for equities, some corners of the U.S. stock market are particularly vulnerable. Shares of smaller companies, especially those that are unprofitable or reliant on debt, are in the crosshairs. Economically sensitive sectors such as consumer or housing-related companies could falter, while dividend-paying stocks may lose appeal, undercut by more attractive Treasury payouts. Technology, the largest part of the U.S. stock market based on weighting, could see pressure, particularly among shares that gained significantly during the market's recent rally, such as semiconductors. If most of the value depends on future cash flows, cheap debt, private market marks, or a resilient consumer, higher yields do real damage, said Joshua Barone, wealth manager at Savvy Advisors in Reno, Nevada. A global bond rout continued to cloud markets on Tuesday, as rising energy prices stemming from the Middle East war drove inflation worries and the potential for interest rate hikes around the world. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yield hit 4.675 during the session, its highest level since February 2025. Yields move in the opposite direction of the price of bonds. Rising benchmark yields tend to pressure equity valuations, and U.S. stocks could be particularly exposed with major indexes around record highs. Companies and consumers face higher borrowing costs, which can weigh on economic growth and corporate profits. Higher yields also make fixed income returns more competitive. Many smaller companies rely on debt financing, which becomes more expensive as yields rise. The prospect of higher rates hurting the U.S. economy could also be a harsher blow for smaller companies, which tend to be more domestically focused, investors said. Small caps rely more on the consumer and more on the capital market, said Matthew Miskin, co-chief investment strategist at Manulife John Hancock Investments. And both of those can be strained with higher rates. Many smaller companies have yet to turn a profit, meaning that their values are heavily linked to expected future cash flows. As yields rise, those cash flows lose luster as investors can more immediately realize a higher return from safer treasuries. Consumer discretionary and retail stocks face a double whammy, said Keith Lerner, investment chief officer at Truist Advisory Services. Lending rates are moving up and oil prices are moving up, which are two things that are negative for the consumer, Lerner said. With sticky inflation, higher rates are going to be here for longer, just as we step into the busiest time of year for home purchases, said Seth Hickel, portfolio manager at Mindset Wealth Management in Indianapolis. This could have home buyers rethinking that purchase. Stocks that investors rely on for their strong dividends could face pressure as the income available from holding safe haven treasuries is increasing. That includes the utility sectors, whose dividend yield of 2.9% is more than twice the level of the broader S&P 500, according to LSEG data. But utilities, which have been considered a safe haven group, could see their appeal lose or rise if the economic background weakens. For utilities, higher interest rates do compete with dividends, said Ed Clissold, chief of U.S. strategists at Ned Davis Research. If interest rates rise so much that the broad market comes under pressure, then utilities, relatively low market volatility, has trended to outweigh the competition for yield. Technology stocks have faced turbulence when yields rise, as many tech and other growth companies with high expected profits have market values that depend more on future cash flows. The tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite fell 1.5% on Friday and was lower again on Monday and Tuesday. Such pressure this time could have an outsized impact on the market due to its heavy weight in indexes such as the NASDAQ and S&P 500. However, other investors said impressive earnings growth by large tech companies may help buffer the stocks from yield-related pressure. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. World awaits new Fed chair's vision. Incoming Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh's suggestion that independence may not extend fully to the Fed's crisis-fighting role abroad has unsettled central banking peers who fear any reduction in its global footprint would risk market stability. With the dollar by far the world's most used currency, the U.S. Central Bank plays a pivotal role in stabilizing financial markets during periods of stress. It has expanded its crisis-fighting tools over time to keep funding flowing. But Warsh, President Trump's pick for the job, raised eyebrows by suggesting that outside monetary policy, including in international finance, the Fed needs to work closely with the presidential administration and Congress. Warsh told his confirmation hearing that independence in setting interest rates did not fully extend to the Fed's broader operations, prompting some to question whether it would remain fast and decisive when the next crisis hits. Warsh is expected to be sworn in soon by Trump, but no date has been announced. The Fed board said on Friday it named Jerome Powell as chair pro tempore. On and off the record comments from more than half a dozen policymakers indicate they are attentive to Warsh's remarks and await clarification, but they anticipate no big policy change for now, if only because Fed liquidity facilities ultimately protect the U.S. economy as much as those of global partners. A less reliable Fed would encourage countries to keep moving away from the dollar, extending and probably accelerating a 15-year fall in the greenback's global market share, they said. There is little central banks can do to the short term if the Feds curb access to dollars, however, and even a suggestion that liquidity lines may not be readily available could generate market turbulence. It's a double-edged sword, said one European central bank policymaker who declined to be named. The world relies on the dollar, and if the dollar is not readily available, everybody pays a price, the U.S. included. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. This is a short note here. G7 meeting. At a meeting Tuesday in Paris, G7 finance ministers agreed on the need for action to tackle trade imbalances in a fragmented global economy, saying the current situation was unsustainable, with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent arguing for more protection against a flood of cheap Chinese imports. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Agosto Ralph. Black Julianne Nerusik. Denny Look Kathleen M. McKeon. Frasca Lorenzo Gino. Glavy Michael W. Hammond Jean Means. Hanskin Michelle M. Jan Shirley Lou Schaefer. Janice Deborah. Riles Lorraine F. Rosie Gina A. Schreiber Bruce E. Serrano Michael P. And Mark Furman, the former Los Angeles police detective whose testimony, credibility, and incendiary racist language became central to the O.J. Simpson murder trial, has died at 74. And actor Tom Kane, voice of Professor Utonium in Powerpuff Girls, and of Yoda and other characters in various Star Wars spin-offs, died Monday. He was 64. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. You're constantly curious. You move quickly from place to place, person to person, and subject to subject. This year, you reap the benefits of your hard work. Expect power and leadership. It's a year of major decisions. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. The pace of your days will accelerate in the next 4 weeks. You have places to go, things to do, and people to see. Tonight, socialize. Taurus, 3 stars. Today, your focus shifts to money, earnings, and cash flow and the things you own. These areas will be your main concern for the next 4 weeks. Tonight, home and family. Gemini, 4 stars. Ta-da! Today, the sun enters your sign to stay for 4 weeks. This happens only once a year and gives you a chance to recharge your batteries for the rest of the year. Tonight, discussions. Cancer, 3 stars. Keep looking for opportunities to buy wardrobe goodies for yourself because this is an ideal time. Jupiter will continue to be in your sign, giving you divine protection. Tonight, check your belongings. Leo, 4 stars. Tonight, the moon in your sun sign gives you slight edge over all the other signs, which means you can go after what you want. Meanwhile, the next 4 weeks will be more popular. Tonight, you win. Virgo, 3 stars. For the next 4 weeks, the sun is at the top of your chart. Happens only once a year. Tonight, enjoy privacy. 4 stars. Your desire to get out of Dodge will be strong for the next 4 weeks. Do something to broaden your horizons through study, exploring new and unfamiliar experiences, or meeting new people. Tonight, warm friendships. Scorpio, 3 stars. Fiery Mars has moved opposite your sign to stay for 6 weeks. This can make you easily annoyed with partners, spouses, and close friends. Tonight, you are admired. Sagittarius, 4 stars. You will find that you need more sleep in the next 4 weeks. Respect your need for more rest. Tonight, explore. Capricorn, 3 stars. Roll up your sleeves and get ready to accomplish a lot in the next 4 weeks. The strongest energy in a year. Tonight, check your finances. Taurus, 4 stars. In the next 4 weeks, you want to relax, enjoy yourself, and have fun. This same window of time will promote the arts and give you opportunities to express your creative talents. Tonight, cooperate and listen. Pisces, 3 stars. Home and family will be your focus for the next 4 weeks. Fiery Mars has changed signs today, which will energize your communications. Tonight, get better organized. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Fix for cloudy dishes. Dear Heloise, we are using citric acid to keep our dishes and glassware clear. When dishwashing detergents stopped using phosphates, our glassware got cloudy. Additives became readily available at the grocery store. The 12 and 16 ounce containers were pricey but effective. After a few years of cost, I finally read the ingredients. Citric acid. That's it. A quick search brought up several online options by the pound. It also works super fast to cut through hard water buildup at a fraction of the cost. And that's from Cynthia. Tricky wood flooring. Dear Heloise, excuse me. I just wanted to let people know that the vinyl plank floors or luxury vinyl plank floors are great. They're waterproof, scratch resistant, and more. However, if you get one of the floors that looks like wood planks, take a careful look at the patterns. Some of them have black spots. This is natural in real wood flooring. However, it's a nuisance when you try to clean vinyl floors and can't tell the difference between a squished raisin and a spot that's printed on the floor. I'm tempted to take some beige or light brown paint and dab it over the spots. Any suggestions would be appreciated. From Joan. Joan, painting over the black spots will wear off over time, so you'll eventually have to continue repainting it. Placing a sticker over the spots will also come off and might leave a sticky residue. If I were in your place, I'd just leave it alone. But do my readers have any suggestions for Joan's dilemma? Let us know. That's from Heloise. Counting back change. Dear Heloise, this may not be in your ballywick, but I'm so tired of young clerks dumping change in my hand and saying, there you go. Obviously, they're not trained well. I expect them to count my change as they put it in my hand and say thank you. Sales training staff and managers, please take note. From Patricia. Patricia, I remember when clerks counted a customer's change back to them. To me, it's just more professional to count out the change. So I asked a store manager why they didn't count change back to the customer, and her answer was that many of the people whom they hire are unable to grasp the concept, or they get confused while counting. Does anyone out there believe that counting change back to a customer is difficult? Let us know at Heloise@heloise.com. And Dancing to the Oldies. Dear Heloise, to Paula in Tucson, Arizona, I too am retired and hate ironing. I've invested in several gold and oldies CDs. When it comes time to dust, I play these CDs very loud as I dance around the house, singing while I dust. In my mind, I'm still very young as I enjoy my memories through movement and music. It's good exercise too, and that's from Jackie. Jackie, I do the same thing. Many times I've vacuumed to Roy Orbison's songs or dusted to The Four Seasons. I usually mop the floors to an opera. I may sing off key, but it makes housework a lot more fun. Anyone else out there like dancing while dusting? That's Heloise.
Whistle while you work.
That's a good one.
Okay. Putin heads to China for summit with Xi. Beijing. China and Russia leaders are set to meet for a summit Wednesday in Beijing featuring discussions on bilateral and international issues capped by an intimate tete-a-tete between old friends over tea. Coming on the heels of President Donald Trump's visit to the Chinese capital, the optics and outcomes of the meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin will be closely scrutinized and compared. Xi is known for hosting visitors, the leaders, over tea, but the setting and manner of such encounters can be viewed as a signal of the Chinese leader's regard for the guest. And GOP senators advance $72 billion deportation bill. Washington. Republicans in the U.S. Senate on Tuesday advanced partisan legislation setting $72 billion in new funding for President Trump's aggressive and controversial migrant deportation programs. The action by the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee did not settle a continuing battle over whether the measure should include $1 billion in additional funding for security enhancements to Trump's 90,000 square foot White House ballroom already under construction and other Secret Service activities. Republicans defeated at least 8 Democratic attempts to prohibit the use of federal funds for ballroom-related expenses and shift that money to programs such as countering child sex exploitation and renewing a subsidy to help people buy health insurance. Meanwhile, work continued behind the scenes to win the Senate parliamentarians' backing for the $1 billion in ballroom-related spending after it was blocked on Saturday. That includes specifying at least $220 million of that funding would pay for the physical construction of the ballroom. Originally, Trump had pledged that his vanity project, as Democrats call it, would be paid for using only private donations. Republicans in the Senate and House Representatives hope to pass the massive bill and send it to Trump for signing into law by week's end. Senate committee Republicans defeated all 57 Democratic amendments to the legislation. And Ebola. Well, actually, let's just do a quick summary here. 26 more suspended Ebola deaths were recorded in 24 hours in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, authorities said Tuesday.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, May 20th on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beanon
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beanie.
On to some local and regional news. A heat wave could squeeze New York's electricity supply. A summer heat wave could put a bigger squeeze on the state's electric supply than usual, with the state's capacity to generate electricity dropping because fossil fuel-powered plants are being decommissioned faster than renewable energy sources are coming online. The state has less wiggle room to handle a spike in demand, which typically happens when temperatures soar in the summer. That is the conclusion of the New York Independent System Operator, also known as NYISO, New York Independent System Operator, which oversees the state's power grid. Its annual summer reliability assessment underscores the challenges the state faces to meet rising demand for electricity. The planning studies have shown we're operating a system with less capacity year in, year out, said Kevin Lanahan, NYISO's Vice President of External Affairs and Corporate Communications. What that means in essence is that we have less of a reserve of megawatts to rely on when the system is under stress. The reliability margin reflects the amount of available resources NYISO can call on during extended hot or cold stretches. Under normal conditions, NYISO is required to keep 2,620 megawatts from available resources in reserves. Based on forecast peak demand this summer compared with available power resources, NYISO is predicting the reliability margin will shrink to 417 megawatts, the lowest in recent history. That reserve margin can help address sudden loss of a generator or a transmission line, Lanahan said. In a sense, it's an insurance policy, but that reserve margin year in and year out has gotten much slimmer. The combination of factors are causing the margin to shrink. Demand for electricity is increasing. Older power generating facilities are being retired, and some of the facilities online are decades old. Lanahan said during 2 heat waves during the summer of 2025 and a cold snap earlier this year, the system performed less than optimally. Now it's not just a forecast or a planning study that warns of what could happen in the future, he said. When peak demand situations arise, control room operators can ask large load customers to temporarily scale back their power use to free up more supply per agreements in place ahead of time. Another option, buying surplus power from other states at a higher cost. We're being notified by our neighbors that they have less of a cushion as well, Lanahan said. The state is pushing to add more wind and solar power capacity, but those resources contributions are limited by weather conditions unlike nuclear or natural gas. Governor Kathy Hochul has pushed for increasing the state's nuclear generation capacity, but such new projects are expected to take years to enter service. NYISO favors aggressively pursuing investment in all kinds of energy to maintain the diversity of resources at the state's disposal, Lanahan said. Much has been made of the impact that proposed data centers will have on the system, but so far the increased demand is coming from electrification of buildings and the transportation sector. Large-scale manufacturing products such as Micron Technology near Syracuse and a Chobani facility in the Mohawk Valley are also on the way. The large load demand hasn't really hit our system yet, and that's another item that has us rather concerned, Lanahan said. Ben Wilson, president of National Grid Ventures, the utility's unregulated arm, says an all-the-above energy approach is critical to maintain system reliability and supporting affordability for customers and communities. This includes disciplined planning and investment in transmission, generation, and flexible capacity, while maximizing existing infrastructure to ensure power keeps flowing for families and businesses across New York when the grid is under the greatest strain, Wilson said in an online post. Hodgson Ross attorneys William Helmer and David Spitzer said in light of the shrinking reliability margin, addressing transmission would seem to be the low-hanging fruit. What is needed is a consensus that the transmission system must be reinforced, reinvented, and made more resilient, they wrote in a blog post about the reliability report. For this summer, under baseline conditions, NISO forecasts a reliability margin that would be the lowest in recent history and down 58% from last year. We've got increased consumer demand. We have retired a lot of power generation supply in the last several years, and the supply that we're relying on is 50, 60, sometimes more than 70 years old, Lanahan said. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. 8 prison guards are hurt in attacks by Collins inmates. 8 officers at Collins Correctional Facility were injured badly enough to require treatment at outside hospitals in 2 separate struggles with inmates during the first week of May, according to the union that represents correction officers. The most seriously injured officer was hospitalized for several days, the New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association said. The union called the incidents and injuries unacceptable and placed the blame for the violence on New York's HALT Act, a law that limits the use of segregated housing for inmates. A spokesman for the state's Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, which oversees the state's prison system, wasn't immediately available for content. Union officials have said the law creates unsafe conditions for prison guards, employees, and other inmates because the restrictions on solitary confinement and similar message under the HALT Act means that inmates are now acting without any fear of repercussions for their actions. To see what the families of our members go through daily, wondering if their loved one will be injured at work, is demoralizing and unacceptable, said Kenny Gold, the union's vice president for the Western region. The first incident occurred May 2nd when an officer found an inmate on the floor in a dorm area of the medium security prison, apparently intoxicated, and screaming incoherently. While being taken to the infirmary on a stretcher, the inmate allegedly kicked one officer and grabbed another officer's hands and wrists. Officers reported knee and hand injuries, and one officer had trouble breathing after possible exposure to an unknown substance, the union said. To an unknown substance, the union said. The 2 officers were treated at Bertrand Tracy Chaffee Hospital, and one officer was hospitalized, according to the union. The second incident occurred May 5th when the staff tried to escort a 51-year-old inmate to programming and found his cell was not in compliance with facility rules. When ordered to return to his cell, the inmate allegedly charged officers, struck one in the mouth, and continued resisting after officers took him to the ground, according to a statement from the union. The 6 officers who required treatment at hospitals after the May 5th incident reported injuries to the elbow, shoulder, knee, hip, shin, hand, and face. None of the injured officers returned to duty that day. The inmate involved in the May 5th incident is serving a 10 to 12-year sentence for criminal contempt and attempted assault convictions out of New York County. He is eligible for parole in August, the union said. Last year, a walkout by corrections officers at Collins ignited the statewide illegal strike at prisons as guards cited staffing shortages, mandatory overtime, and environment created by the HALT Act as factors. Governor Kathy Hochul fired about 2,000 prison guards who participated in the strike. Within a year, state officials reported about half of the fired correction officers had been rehired.
Thank you, Larry. Judge set to rule on evidence in child abuse case. 2 weeks before Christmas, a 7-year-old boy arrived at the hospital near death. His body temperature so low it would not register on a thermometer. The boy had ligature marks on his neck, bruising on his arms, wrists, and ankles, and what looked like possible cigarette burns on his skin, according to police. Doctors at the hospital didn't expect him to live. They also felt certain that the boy had been a victim of terrible abuse. Everyone I spoke to there, including a child abuse doctor, stated they were extremely certain and confident the injuries were from acts of abuse and possibly over a long period of time. Buffalo Police Detective Mark Constantino said, despite horrific allegations of abuse that sound like descriptions of torture, prosecutors have described waterboarding and attempted drowning that led to 2 incidents of cardiac arrest on December 11th. The boy survived. New details in the criminal case against the boy's mother and stepfather emerged at evidence suppression hearings in recent weeks as Erie County prosecutors move ahead toward a trial scheduled this fall. Jacqueline J. Balabis, 26, and Paris D. Woods, 25, each face 14 felony charges for suspected abuse between October 16th and December 11th, when police responded to the family's Parkdale Avenue apartment. State Supreme Court Justice Kelly Vaco will decide whether any of Balabis and Woods' statements will be precluded from being used by prosecutors at trial. The other subject of the suppression hearing, which was held on April 29th and May 13th, had to do with the seizure of the suspect's phones by police. Vaco's decision on the statements and the legality of the seizures is expected in early August. Prosecutors revealed in court last week that they expect the victim, who has since turned 8, and his sister to testify at Balabis and Woods' trial, with jury selection scheduled to begin October 13th. They also plan to call an expert witness who will contextualize the nature of the children's testimony, prosecutors said. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. BTPM radio changes delayed. Snyder's last show is May 29th. This is what I'm thinking. Wait, don't tell me. The radio changes being made by Buffalo Turonic Public Media, BTPM, have been delayed from May to July, according to a spokesperson for BTPM. The switch is complicated and is taking time, the spokesperson wrote in an email. Perhaps more details will be available when BTPM has another State of the Station's TV radio show at 9 p.m. May 27th on BTPM, PBS, BTPM's YouTube channel, BTPM Classical, BTPM NPR, and BTPM The Bridge. The local public broadcaster announced in late February a shift of programming that resulted from the recent FCC approval of the 94.5 to become an advertiser-supported station. Here's what the public broadcaster announced a few months ago. BTPM Classical is moving from 94.5 FM to 88.7 FM, joining with NPR programs Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Wait, don't tell me. They can have sponsors, but not advertisers. The GTPM Classical shows that will be off 88.7 when NPR programs are on will be available on an HD channel, BTPM Classical Stream, and WNJA in Jamestown. BTPM NPR will also be available on the BTPM NPR Stream, as well as on an HD station, 91.3 WOLN in Olean, and 88.1 WUBJ in Jamestown. 94.5 will get a new name and become a full-service station featuring local, national, and international news, public affairs, entertainment, sports, and music, supported by members and advertising, and also have a streaming option. In other words, it sounds like 94.5 will become what 88.7 has been. All BTPM sports coverage will include high school sports, skin in the game, the business of sports, the scoreboard will move to 94.5. TPM The Bridge will simulcast on 94.5 in the evening and still be available on the BTPM The Bridge stream and on HD station. In a February release, BTPM said the realignment is part of a broader strategy to strengthen the organization's long-term financial sustainability after the loss of $2.2 million in annual federal funding. WKSE-FM morning personality Janet Snyder's last day at the station is May 29th. She announced in March that she will be ending her four-decade run at the Odyssey-owned station. Snyder's program remains popular. During the latest available ratings for January through March, Janet and Nick Pickles in the morning was the number 2 in the targeted demographic of women aged 25 to 54, to behind only WBLK-FM, and the show was number 1 in weekly Hume, which measures the number of unique listeners. Snyder's departure from the morning show will mark the end of an era at WKSE and Buffalo Radio, which has experienced decline as it has throughout the industry. She is one of the last personality-driven local hosts of pop music morning shows in Buffalo, exemplified decades earlier by Danny Neverth, Jeff Kay, and Stan Roberts, and later by Larry Norton. A 1983 graduate of Williamsville East and a 1987 graduate of Ithaca College, Snyder was inducted into the Buffalo Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2023. Audacity is conducting a search for her replacement. The National Comedy Center in Jamestown announced last week that it has another reason for fans of comedy history to visit. It will become the home of the career archive of comedy legend Mel Brooks. According to a release from the center, the archive of nearly 150,000 creative and production documents and over 5,000 photographs offers an unparalleled record of Brooks' creative life and the development of works that transformed American comedy and culture, including Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, The Producers, Silent Movie, History of the World Part 1, and Spaceballs.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:16. On to sports. Bills Brady focuses on the finer points during the OTAs. The Buffalo Bills are back on the football field, and Joe Brady couldn't be happier. The team's first-year head coach was grateful to have the extra weeks of conditioning, but there's nothing quite like 11 players on offense and defense lining up against each other, even if contact is prohibitive because of the NFL rules. You're ready to let the guys go compete against one another, Brady said Tuesday ahead of the team's second organized team activity of the spring. We've had an outstanding off-season, but it's really cool to kind of see it all come together, right? We spend a lot of time when guys aren't here, but just getting on the field yesterday, just offense and defense kind of going against each other, it was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. Brady finds himself in a different position this off-season. As the team's offensive coordinator the past couple of years, his focus strictly was on that side of the ball. Now he's in charge of the entire roster, one that has gone through a great deal of change on the defensive side of the ball. That naturally has led to him focusing a lot of his attention on defense. Kind of seeing it all come together, seeing like a lot of the new faces, kind of how they fit. We had some guys who were injured last year, seeing them be able to get back on the field, he said. So I'm excited about where we're at. I remember doing my first year in the offense right here, and you've got to set the foundation and be smart about not putting too much in initially and then kind of ramp it up as we go. End of OTAs and the training camp, so it's been cool to be part of the installation process. One of those injured players is linebacker Terrell Bernard. He spoke Tuesday about his early impressions of Brady as head coach. It's been great, he said. We all knew Joe before, but to really see him step into that role and become the guy, the head coach, it's been fun. His energy, his passion for the game, and what he expects out of us is evident just so far in the meetings that we've had. The 10 OTAs teams are permitted to hold are voluntary. Brady says he's been encouraged by the attendance, though, joking that maybe General Manager Brandon Beane should get credit for that by negotiating contracts that include workout bonuses that entice players to participate. Safety Cole Bishop, linebackers Joe Anderson and Dorian Williams, cornerback Christian Benford, and running back James Cook, and offensive tackles Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown were among a group of players who were not spotted at Tuesday's practice, but otherwise attendance was strong. We have a great locker room. We have a great group of guys who want to be here in Buffalo, want to be around the guys, Brady said. It's part of the reason I enjoy going away for training camp. The guys are together and connected. This is the time of year that a lot of the guys have homes elsewhere, and maybe their families might not come, so the guys are around. I think it helps that we have some of the new schemes, but really pleased with our attendance. At the moment, Brady is leaving most of the teaching of X's and O's to the new schemes to his coordinators, Pete Carmichael on offense and Jim Leonhard on defense. Brady's main concern is elsewhere. He's watching to see how players run to the football on defense or how they celebrate together. He wants to observe the tempo in and out of the huddle and how the offense gets lined up. Defensively, he's focused on the communication in the secondary and making sure the unit is on the same page. I'm not concerned with the big plays right now. I'm not concerned with some of the other elements, Brady said. We'll make mistakes. There'll be plenty of mistakes out there today. There were mistakes yesterday, but what does it look like the next day? Did we learn from the mistakes? So I'm really focused on the how, by what we're doing right now, and then we'll continue to progress into that training camp and really hone in on the scheme. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to hockey for a while. With breakup day at hand, the Sabres look toward sustainability. Some of the Buffalo Sabres still wore their playoff beards, a little more than 12 hours after their postseason ended. Maybe that was a matter of having a lack of time to devote to personal grooming, or maybe it was a sign of denial. This run in the Stanley Cup playoffs can't be over yet, can it? But it is, after a 3-2 loss to the Montreal Canadiens in overtime of Game 7 of a second-round series Monday night at KeyBank Center. The Sabres aren't preparing to head to North Carolina for the Eastern Conference Final. Instead, they began breaking down their dressing room stalls, processing playoff elimination, and looking toward 2026-27. The Sabres earned their first playoff berth since 2011 and completed the most successful season for the franchise in 15 years. But it's over. With that, this year's team has suddenly set new standards for the organization and for the teams that follow. Make the playoffs. Don't settle for trailing in the third period. Be a team with no other team looks forward to facing. Now, if the Sabres want to continue the culture they have created this season, they have to craft sustainability. Make this a constant rather than becoming a flash in the pan. Goalie Alex Lyon said the end of the season evoked a strange feeling within the Sabres, who weren't used just to continuity of the season. They look forward to coming to the rink and working together and moving through the routines and rhythms that came from winning, hallmarks of a special team. To have that abrupt ending when you're on a razor's edge, it's an interesting feeling. I don't feel like I fully processed what happened in December through April. Now that the season's over, it's kind of a big mash of things to me. Doan completed his first season with the Sabres after joining the team in June 2025 as part of a trade from the Utah Mammoth with defenseman Michael Kesselring for J.J. Peterka. Doan said he wanted to help the Sabres find a solution to continuing in an upwards direction toward success. Doan became a fixture with the Sabres in just his third season. Doan scored a career-best 25 goals with 27 assists. He became a net front presence that contributed in the power play. The Sabres invested in him too. He agreed in January to a 7-year contract extension with an average annual value, AAV, of $6.97 million. Doan, though, expects the make of the team to change. There are 6 players who are set to become unrestricted free agents: Alex Tuch, Beck Malenstein, Josh Dunn, Tanner Pearson, Logan Stanley, and Luke Shen. And 3 more will become restricted free agents: Kesselring, Zach Benson, and Peyton Krebs. At the end of June, and a reality in the makeup of professional sports rosters, is that no team will ever be the same from year to year. The Sabres didn't have a strong sense of their ability as a team when they began this season in October. They cultivated it over the course of the season. Now, as the Sabres look ahead to this fall, Dunn outlined his vision for the team, and he wants the culture of the team and the character it has formed to continue to evolve. That's on us now, moving forward, Doan said. Everyone in that room, we want to be a team that's in the playoffs every year. You're a goal away from going to the conference finals. That's something that you have to build off as a group. That's the element of confidence in the room. Now we're heading into next year. Benson, though, still explained the abrupt end of the season in candid terms. It sucks that it's over, for sure, the left wing said. It's going to suck not to be able to come to the rink tomorrow and see your brothers and compete for the end goal, which is the Stanley Cup. There's a lot of to be proud of, but it still hurts. I think it's going to hurt for a while. And Kulich resurfaces. Yuri Kulich made his first public appearance with the Buffalo Sabres the day after they were eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs. The center hadn't played in an NHL game since the fourth week of the season due to blood clots, but said Tuesday at KeyBank Center that he underwent a procedure 2 months ago at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. They took the whole clot out, Kulich said. Kulich had 3 goals and 2 assists in 12 games this season before he was sidelined. Sabres coach Lindy Bruff on November 4th initially explained that Kulich was dealing with fluid buildup in his ears, but on November 10th said Kulich would miss significant time. Kulich initially thought he would be able to return to the Sabres lineup this season, and that he would be back within a matter of weeks and maybe 2 months at the most. Sabres general manager Jarmo Kekalainen, though, said on March 6th that Kulich would most likely be out for the remainder of the season, and he continued to get treatment for his condition. Kulich's return to the lineup would add depth and experience at center, as he'll join a group that includes Zach Benson, Konsta Helenius, and Josh Norris and Sam Carrick. Kulich had 15 goals and 9 assists in 62 games with the Sabres in 24-25. It was kind of a roller coaster, Kulich said. It was a tough year, but at the same time, I can take advantage of it in a positive way, Kulich said. And Helenius hits the skies. The Sabres' playoff run ended, but the season will continue for Helenius, who will join Finland for the IIHF World Championships in Switzerland. We lost yesterday, but you get a chance to keep playing, and of course, you want to win here. Finland plays Latvia on Thursday in Zurich, and then Great Britain on Friday in Zurich. Helenius said he leaves Wednesday to join Finland. I think I had a great season, so if I get a chance to keep playing, I want to play, Helenius said. I want to go over and play for Finland and play for the championships. There's so many good players, it's not easy, so I think it helps a lot for next year.
Thank you, Larry. Bill's Stadium project meets diversity goals. As Gilbane Turner closes in on substantial completion of the Buffalo Bills' new stadium, the project's construction manager has met the diversity targets for contractors, but it wasn't always easy to procure enough participation from minority-owned and women-owned, that's MWBE businesses, especially locally, to reach the project goals. Gilbane Turner said it had topped more than 30% in MWBE participation in the stadium's construction, and more than half of them are regional companies. There were early worries about whether the Bills and their project manager would be able to involve enough underserved and disadvantaged businesses to reach the goals. So much so that the Erie County Stadium Corporation, the state entity that is overseeing the project, met with Gilbane Turner early in 2023 to see how things could get turned around. The toughest part of finding qualified contractors, said John LaRoe, Senior Vice President and leader of the New York division at Gilbane Building Company. Outreach sessions the company held across the state wound up being critical in helping the effort. Earlier this year, the bill said around 80 small businesses reached out to the team's workforce development consultant, Developments by Gem, to inquire about getting certified, and at that point, less than 20% of them had attained a state or a county certification. The slow start is typical of the kind of work that we were doing out of the gate, LaRoe said Tuesday, while standing in front of the recently erected Bills logo and Highmark Stadium signs on the west side of the stadium. Our challenge was what the public perception was early, but we had a plan there all along. We had to reach far and deep to try to find people to participate. Gilbane Turner has now awarded around 300 contracts to 140 MWBE firms, and that's resulted in almost $500 million in payments to those businesses, with substantially more to come, LaRoe said. Even as the company recruited contractors from throughout the state, 60% of those MWBE firms used on the project are from Western New York. Minority-owned and women-owned businesses have exceeded the goals of 15% involvement on the project before the last phase of stadium construction, which is the demolition of the old Highmark Stadium. Service-disabled companies are also tending to get over the 6% goal by the end of the demolition next spring. The Bills' hiring goals tied to the community benefits agreement are based on $1.5 billion, which was the price of the stadium at the time the agreement was signed in 2023. Since then, the stadium cost has gone up to around $2.2 billion, with cost overruns paid by the Bills. The team received $850 million in public money from the state and Erie County. From the beginning of construction, we recognized the effort it would take to reach our goals, said Penny Semenia, Vice President of Stadium Relations for the Bills. The next step for Gilbane Turner is readying for June 1st, when a construction manager turns the project and building over to the Bills upon substantial completion of the project. The team actually has until July 1st to reach substantial completion as part of its deal with the state, which will become the stadium leaseholder as the county transfers the land for the Bills campus this summer.
The stadium is now 96% complete, with the first big event there scheduled for August 8th with the annual Blue and Red practice. It's about more than just participation. It's about building capacity and creating opportunities to make stronger and more competitive businesses, LaRose said. They'll continue to grow long after this project is complete, and they will support a stronger construction industry across Western New York. Jennifer Kuhn, president of Hamburg Overhead Door, was one of the women-owned businesses owners that worked on the stadium project. Women business enterprises have received 174 contracts on the project, or 17% participation, worth $239 million. Meanwhile, minority-owned businesses have accounted for 130 contracts, or 16% participation, equaling $256 million. This project represents much more than just steel, concrete, and construction. It represents opportunity, partnership, and what we can happen when local businesses that have a seat at the table, said Kuhn, a Bill season ticket holder. Being a part of a project of this magnitude reinforces that Western New York companies can compete, deliver, and play an important role in some of the region's biggest projects, she added. Steve Vernelli, president of the Erie County Stadium Corp., credits the state speeding up the process to get some of these firms certified and then onto the project. Certification review times were cut to 90 days, helping connect MWBEs to stadium opportunities. It's a great milestone that we finally hit, Rinaldi said, and I think it's been extremely beneficial throughout the community to do this, and it's a great economic development tool if done well. In coordination with developments by GEM, the state also hosted technical training programs to help small businesses navigate bidding and procurement contracts, supplied mentors, held boot camps, and encouraged networking to aid these business owners in building skills needed to work on this type of project, said Hope Knight, CEO and Commissioner of Empire State Development. These results demonstrate what can happen when you open doors and create opportunity, Knight said. LeBeau said Gilbane Turner held more than 20 outreach and engagement events and spoke with over 1,000 firms to make sure businesses understood the opportunities available on the stadium project. Additionally, it was critical to create more reasonably structured scopes of work that could be done by smaller companies as the project was bid out. The company believes the stadium project will set the tone for bringing inclusiveness and more community impact to future construction in Western New York. Gilbane Turner made a commitment that local and diverse participation was going to be the core measure of our team's success, and we would weave that into how we developed construction of the stadium, LaRose said.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:34. On to Asking Eric. Friends still send cards but haven't visited in years. Dear Eric, we have friends whom we have not seen in more than a decade, yet the wife sends us cards for every holiday, our birthdays, and a Christmas, many times with gift cards enclosed. For a while I told them to stop by and see us or call and chat. It never happens, and I'm just wondering what her motivation is. Thanks for your thoughts. Gifts only. Dear Gifts, respectfully, I don't have a way of knowing what her motivation is, but I can encourage you to ask. There's no harm in expressing curiosity because it helps us to know friends and loved ones better. She may find that she has capacity for sending cards or even prefer that form of touching base, but that visits or phone calls are too much. Everyone communicates in their own ways, so the most helpful thing in this situation may be for you to ascertain what this gesture means. Then you can share what visiting would mean to you. Dear Eric, 20 years ago I found myself part of a group that initially started as a gym buddy group. I was brought inside the circle by the leader, aka the one who initiates and makes plans. Since the pandemic, the gatherings outside the gym, parties, social meetups have increased a great deal. I feel resistance to our leader who would solely determine the theme, the food, the activities, the dress code for the parties or events. The chance to be called out for any mistakes in a dress code can happen at a party. She has a strong personality with the habit of saying what is on her mind with speech that can be harsh and shouty. The other members seem fine with it. I do not understand why I just can't grin and bear it during parties. I have a fear of leaving not only because of possibly hurting her, but because she hasn't always been kind to me. But I find myself not wanting to come to socials. I am resisting belonging to a group with a hierarchical nature. If I leave, it would not be taken lightly. And will I lose the opportunity to have these people in my life? What of their kindness? Am I just being too fussy? Should I stay or go? Dear, stay or go. While this group may have worked for you at one time, it seems clear that this is no longer the case. Social gatherings and meetups shouldn't be the source of so much stress, and no one should be shouted at for not following a dress code. Part of the guilt you feel may be coming from the controlling influence the group's leader has over the rest of you. She wants and has gotten a say over what you do, how you dress, and what you say, so it makes sense that she is in some way a voice in your head telling you that leaving would be a betrayal of her kindness. It's important to remember that her feelings are her responsibility. If you step away from kindness and clarity of kindness and clarity of intention, any negativity she feels or expresses is on her side of the street. You may indeed lose some connections in a group, but not necessarily all of them. You have the ability and the freedom to make side plans and cultivate side relationships. Ultimately, it seems healthier for you to be around people who respect your autonomy than to suppress that autonomy in the name of getting along. And dear Eric, this is my wife's suggestion for resolving the letter writer's dilemma about a twin brother's request to announce his engagement in the midst of his sibling's wedding, already saved the date. The sibling getting married should plan a toss of the bridal bouquet to the brother's girlfriend. The twin brother would then come forward and propose to his girlfriend. This solution allows the twin and the guests to celebrate the wedding undiluted by the brother's news and allows the brother to take center stage as the twin is about to exit. The twins can collaborate on this plan rather than compete for attention, and the guests will enjoy this bonus, happy surprise. Everyone wins. Lucky husband. Dear husband, I admit I was surprised by how many readers disagreed with my assertion that if the marrying twin didn't want the brother to propose at the wedding, the brother should find another time. It actually prompted quite a few responses. Personally, it would not be my choice, but it doesn't matter what I'll do or what I do. I don't even have a twin. Your wife's solution is very creative and could be a great way for the twins to work together for a shared celebration. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trump bought stock to Eli Lilly as agencies boosted obesity drugs. Washington. President Trump earlier this year bought as much as $680,000 in stock of Eli Lilly, the maker of blockbuster obesity drugs, as the agencies he oversees undertook an agenda that largely benefited the company. On May 14th, the federal government released ethics disclosures revealing a list of stocks and bond trades made on Trump's behalf from January to March of this year. They included extensive trades across the economy, including investments in tech giants such as Microsoft and NVIDIA, aerospace firms such as Boeing, and household name companies such as Target and Chipotle. In healthcare, however, the trades for Lilly, a company valued by the stock market at just under $1 trillion, stand out. That's because the timing of Trump's purchasers coincides with several favorable government decisions benefiting the drug maker's GLP-1 business, including progress toward a long-held goal, qualifying the drugs for reimbursement from Medicare, the government health insurance program primarily serving seniors when they are prescribed for weight loss. The disclosure forms, which bear Trump's distinct signature, give ranges rather than exact dollar amounts for the trades. They show 7 purchases of Lilly stock made on the president's behalf through the end of March, the first of which occurred on January 6. During that period and just after, several Trump administration initiatives ultimately benefited Lilly. Perhaps the biggest was an initiative from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which was proposing a pilot program a temporary bridge, potentially followed by permanent reimbursement, through which Medicare patients would pay $50 a month for GLP-1 drugs. The deadline for drug manufacturers to submit applications indicating their interest in participating was January 8th. Lilly has since been named as a participating manufacturer in the program, calling it a significant milestone. Another purchase on February 10th of West Pharmaceutical Services stock valued between $250,000 and $500,000 was similarly a bet on the GLP-1 market. The company, which manufactures injectable devices for drugs, credited growth in its GLP-1 business with driving increased revenue in its most recent quarter. Lilly declined to comment. West Pharmaceutical Services did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A spokesperson at the Department of Health and Human Services declined to comment, referring KFF Health News to the White House. A White House spokesperson referred questions to the Trump Organization, the holding company for most of the president's businesses, which did not immediately respond to a request for comment. In response to other outlets' questions about Trump's stock trades, the Trump Organization has said the investments are controlled by independent brokers. It's unclear from the disclosure whether Trump directed any of the trades himself. 4 of the Lilly stock purchases are marked unsolicited, though the Office for Government Ethics did not immediately respond to a request for clarification on the use of that term. Trump's assets are in a trust held by his children, and Trump Organization spokespeople have said in the past that neither the president nor his children play a role in selecting, directing, or approving specific investments. Eric Trump, the president's son and a Trump Organization executive, said May 15th on X, to suggest that individual stocks are being bought or sold at the discretion of any member of the Trump family would be a lie and blatantly false. He claimed the purchases of index funds account for the investments. The disclosures record purchases of funds and individual stocks. Lilly had a strong 2025 finish, worth $65 billion in revenue, up $20 billion from the year before. GLP-1 drugs accounted for a substantial portion of that total. At the beginning of 2026, the drug maker expected another surge in revenue this year above $80 billion. It was a stunning projection, analysts at the Citibank said. Analysts for the financial services firm TD Cowen said the Medicare and Medicaid market would be critical to making it happen. Guidance anticipates favorable impact from Medicare coverage of obesity medications by 7/1/26, the analyst noted. Historically, Medicare hasn't covered obesity drugs. In a May 2025 open letter noting unfavorable reimbursement decisions across government and private-run insurance, Lilly said, "This isn't about just one medicine, formulary, or insurance plan. It's about a system that limits patients and healthcare providers the ability to choose an obesity management treatment plan that is best for them." Key to the market that was the pilot program rolled out by CMS called Balance, aimed at helping Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries improve their health. Last fall, 12% of U.S. adults reported currently using GLP-1s, according to a KAF poll, and 56% of those who had used GLP-1s found the medications prescribed to treat diabetes and aid weight loss hard to afford. The appearance of a potential conflict of interest is enough to trouble ethics experts. A president who buys or sells the stock of a company whose value is affected by his administration's actions undermines the public's trust in 2 ways, said Kathleen Clark, a legal ethicist at Washington University in St. Louis. First, she said, the public should believe government actions are motivated by common good, not personal enrichment. And second, the public should believe that those within government aren't benefiting from inside information. A ban on stock trading by the president would require an act of Congress, though some lawmakers have resisted such legislation. Members of Congress are permitted to buy and sell stocks. Trump's White House and HHS boosted GLP-1s through the first few months of the year. In January, the government unveiled Trump RX, a web portal directing patients to lower-priced versions of some drugs and some terms and conditions. The website offers Zepbound for as low as $2.99 a month and points patients to LillyDirect, the drug company's telemedicine service prescribing the drug. Company executives haven't commented on Trump RX specifically, but they have touted the telemedicine service. Lilly's 2025 annual filing to the Securities and Exchange Commission said LillyDirect was a growing proportion of our business. Also in February, the FDA identified a broad crackdown on compounded GLP-1s, drugs manufactured by pharmacies that are cheaper and critics charge often unsafe alternatives to Lilly's branded products. The agency made another favorable decision for Lilly in April, approving its Foundayo weight loss pill under its Commissioner's National Priority Voucher Program. The program was launched by FDA Commissioner Marty Makarov, who had promised to approve high-priority drugs in record time. Foundayo was approved in 50 days after the filing. This approval demonstrates what the FDA can achieve when we eliminate delays and prioritize fast and thorough work from the agency and industry partners. Makarov, who stepped down last week, said in an April news release. Not all agency decisions were favorable. The FDA asked Lilly to provide additional safety data regarding liver toxicity in Foundayo, though analysts don't appear particularly troubled. The company has told news outlets that no negative safety signals have been observed. KFF Health News is a national newsroom that produces in-depth journalism about health issues and is one of the key of cooperating programs of KFF, the independent source for health policy research, polling, and journalism.
Thank you, Larry. Russians covertly trained by China, documents reveal. China's armed forces secretly trained about 200 Russian military personnel in China late last year, and some since returned to fight in Ukraine, according to 3 European intelligence agencies and documents seen by Reuters. While China and Russia held a number of joint military exercises since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Beijing repeatedly claimed it is neutral in the conflict and presents itself as a peace mediator. The covert training sessions, which predominantly focused on the use of drones, were outlined in a dual-language Russian-Chinese agreement signed by senior Russian and Chinese officers in Beijing on July 2, 2025. The agreement, reviewed by Reuters, said about 200 Russian troops would be trained at military facilities in locations including Beijing and the eastern city of Nanning. The sources said about this number subsequently trained in China. The agreement also said hundreds of Chinese troops would undergo training in military facilities in Russia. By training Russian military personnel at an operational and tactical level, who then participate in Ukraine, China is far more directly involved in the war on a European continent than previously known, one intelligence official said. The Russian and Chinese defense ministries did not respond to requests for comment on the details outlined in this article. On the Ukraine crisis, China has consistently maintained an objective and impartial stance and worked to promote peace talks. This is consistent and clear and is witnessed by the international community, China's foreign ministry said in a statement. Relevant parties should not deliberately stoke confrontation or shift blame. The intelligence agency spoke on condition of anonymity. European powers, which see Russia as a major security threat, watched warily as increasingly close relations between Russia and China, the world's second largest economy and an important European Union trade partner. The two nations announced a no-limits strategic partnership days before Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and pledged to conduct military exercises to rehearse coordination between their armed forces. As the West tried to isolate Russia, China provided a lifeline by buying its oil, gas, and coal. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is scheduled to host Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday and Wednesday, less than a week after U.S. President Donald Trump's high-profile visit. China and Russia have cast Putin's trip, his 25th visit to China, as further evidence of their all-weather partnership, even as the West urges Beijing to pressure Moscow into ending its war in Ukraine. Drone warfare. Drones have proven to be a vital weapon in Ukraine. Both sides use long-range models to attack targets hundreds of miles away, while on the battlefield, smaller drones remotely controlled by pilots using first-person view equipment and armed with explosives dominate the sky, making it hazardous for armed vehicles or infantry to move. In September, Reuters reported that experts from private Chinese companies had conducted technical development work on military drones for a Russian-attacked drone manufacturer, according to European officials. China's foreign ministry said it was unaware of the collaboration. The two companies identified in the article were sanctioned by the EU last month. According to a training agreement reviewed by Reuters, the Russians would be schooled in disciplines such as drones, electronic warfare, army aviation, and armored infantry. The agreement prohibited any media coverage of the visits in either country and said no third parties should be informed. Visits by Chinese troops to Russia for training have taken place since at least 2024, but Russian personnel training in China is new, two of the intelligence agencies said. While Russia has extensive combat experience in Ukraine, China's vast drone industry offers technological know-how and advanced training methods such as flight simulators, they said. China's People's Liberation Army has not fought a major war for decades, but it expanded quickly in the past 20 years and now rivals U.S. military might in some areas. A significant number of Russian personnel who received training in China were ranking military instructors in a position to pass knowledge down a chain of command, the two intelligence agencies said. One of the agencies said they confirmed the identities of a handful of Russian military personnel who trained in China and since were then directly involved in combat operations with drones in Ukraine's occupied Crimea and Zaporizhia regions. The rank of those people ranged from junior sergeant to lieutenant colonel, the agency said. The names of the individuals appeared in a Russian military document seen by Reuters that listed the servicemen going to China. Reuters was unable to independently confirm the subsequent involvement of those individuals in the Ukraine war. The same intelligence agency said it was highly probable that many of those who trained in China went to Ukraine. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. General, withdrawing troops will take years. Vance claims U.S. won't completely remove presence from Europe. Brussels, the U.S. will pull more troops from Europe, but the process will stretch over years to give allies time to develop capabilities to replace them, NATO's top commander said Tuesday. U.S. Air Force General Alexis Grinkowicz spoke after decisions by President Donald Trump's administration to withdraw about 5,000 troops from Germany and cancel deployment of missiles. European officials were surprised by the timing of the troop announcement, and U.S. officials linking it to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's criticism of the Iran war. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters at a White House briefing Tuesday that a U.S. troop deployment to Poland was delayed, but claimed it was inaccurate to say that the troops were being withdrawn from Europe. We're not talking about pulling every single American troop out of Europe. We're talking about shifting some resources around in a way that maximizes American security, he said. Reports about the change in deployment of 4,000 troops to Poland drew sharp criticism from U.S. lawmakers concerned about potential for Trump to abandon its allies. And in shipping, the United States charged 7 Chinese executives and 4 of the world's largest shipping container companies with conspiring to restrict supply, raising the price of containers during the COVID pandemic, Department of Justice officials said Tuesday. The companies together manufacture about 95% of the world's standard dry shipping containers and conspired to restrict output and fix prices between November 2019 and January 2024, the DOJ said. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranello.
and Larry Beanon. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Kep Foundation, Tyveren Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability